Hey there, welcome to Site Boosters. If you're into tech tips that make life easier, fascinating facts you've never heard before, and the latest updates in cloud computing, AI, and all things tech, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss a future upload. Let's dive right into the video.
It can be somewhat daunting to implement user authentication and authorization from scratch in your application. With Cloud Identity and Access Management, or Cloud IAM for short, and Identity Platform Authentication, you are now free from the burden of building such a system. In the module Handling Authentication and Authorization, you will learn how to create IAM members, specify what resources they have access to, and what operations they can perform on these resources. You will learn how to use service accounts to allow your application to authenticate and authorize itself to invoke Google Cloud APIs. We'll discuss how you can use identity-aware proxy to control access to your application. The Firebase SDK makes it really easy to implement federated identity management. You'll learn how to use the Firebase SDK to validate a user against credentials that are stored in Identity Platform, Google Cloud's enterprise-grade identity and access management platform. Cloud IAM lets you manage access control by defining who, the members, has what access, the role, for what resource. You can grant more granular access to Google Cloud resources using the security principle of least privilege. Only grant access to resources that are necessary. You can specify who has access to your resources with IAM members. Members can be of the following types: Google account, service account, Google Group, Google Workspace domain, or Cloud Identity domain. A Google Cloud account represents a developer, administrator, or person who interacts with Google Cloud. An email address that is associated with a Google account, such as a gmail.com address, can be an identity. A service account belongs to an application instead of to an individual end user. A Google Group is a named collection of Google accounts and service accounts. Every group has a unique email address that is associated with the group. Google Groups are a convenient way to apply an access policy to a collection of users. Google Groups don't have login credentials, so you cannot use them to establish identity to make a request to access a resource. A Google Workspace domain represents a virtual group of all the members in an organization. Google Workspace customers can associate their email accounts with an internet domain name. When you do this, each email account takes the form username@yourdomain.com. You can specify an identity by using any internet domain name that is associated with the Google Workspace account. Like groups, domains cannot be used to establish identity, but they enable convenient permission management. A Cloud Identity domain represents a virtual group of all members in an organization, but doesn't provide access to Google Workspace applications and features. You can grant access to users for a Google Cloud resource. Some examples of resources are projects, compute engine instances, and cloud storage buckets. Permissions determine what operations are allowed on a resource. In the Cloud IAM world, permissions are represented in the form of service, resource, verb. For example, pubsub.subscriptions.consume. Permissions usually, but not always, correspond one-to-one with REST methods. That is, each Google Cloud service has an associated set of permissions for each REST method that it exposes. The caller of that method needs those permissions to call that method. For example, the caller of publisher.publish needs the pubsub.topics.publish permission. A role is a collection of permissions. You cannot assign a permission to the user directly. Instead, you grant them a role. When you grant a role to a user, you grant them all the permissions that the role contains. With Cloud IAM, a Cloud API method requires the identity making the API request to have the appropriate permissions to use the resource. You can grant permissions by granting roles to a user, a group, or a service account. there are three kinds of roles: basic, predefined, and custom. The basic roles can be applied at the project level using the Cloud Console, the API, and the gcloud command line tool. Note, granting the owner role at a resource level, such as a pub/sub topic, does not grant the owner role on the parent project. The owner role does not contain any permission for the organization resource. Granting the owner role at the organization level does not allow you to update the organization's metadata, but it allows you to modify projects under that organization. Cloud IAM provides predefined roles that give granular access to specific Google Cloud resources and prevent unwanted access to other resources. You can grant multiple roles to the same user. For example, the same user can have network admin and log viewer roles on a project, and also have a publisher role for a pub/sub topic within that project. What if you need something even finer grained? That's what custom roles permit. A lot of companies use a least privilege model, in which each person in your organization has the minimal amount of privilege needed to do his or her job. So, for example, maybe I want to define an instance operator role to allow some users to stop and start compute engine virtual machines, but not reconfigure them. Custom roles allow me to do that. A couple of cautions about custom roles. First, if you decide to use custom roles, you'll need to manage the permissions that make them up. Some companies decide they'd rather stick with the predefined roles. Second, custom roles can only be used at the project or organization levels. They can't be used at the folder level. A policy is attached to a resource and is used to enforce access control whenever that resource is accessed. A Cloud IAM policy is represented by the policy object. A policy consists of a list of bindings. A binding binds a list of members to a role. The Cloud IAM API methods available are set IAM policy, which allows you to set policies on your resources; get IAM policy, which allows you to get a policy that was previously set; and test IAM permissions, which allows you to test whether the caller has the specific permissions for a resource. Cloud platform resources are organized hierarchically, where the organization node is the root node in the hierarchy. The projects are the children of the organization, and the other resources are the children of the projects. Each resource has exactly one parent.
Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.